Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Gila Glassberg. I'm a registered dietitian and a certified intuitive eating counselor. And tonight I have Libby Rothschild, who is, I'm sure, as you all know, a dietitian boss, and she's helping the entire dietitian community learn better skills, and she's coaching other dietitians, and she's also helping anyone who needs on social media. So you could find Libby at, what's your social media handle?
Yep. Libby Rothschild on Instagram, and my podcast is Dietitian Boss. My website is just my name, Libby Rothschild.
Okay, awesome. So thanks so much for coming, Libby.
Oh, I'm happy to have you. We've been connected on social for a while and chatting, so it's really nice to have a conversation with you and be able to give back to the community.
Okay, thanks. So tonight I really wanted to pick your brain a little bit about something that I hear you talk a lot about on your podcast, which is I guess noticing your limiting beliefs and learning to challenge them. So a little background for people who don't know, besides for having a lot of dietitians now are leaning more towards the private practice because it just makes more sense. To work in clinical, you don't really have flexibility and you're kind of working under the reins of a doctor. And then as a dietitian in private practice, you could just, live your best life, but you're coaching those dietitians to do that. So that's a whole different ball game. So how did you get the idea or the strength or the courage to totally pave your own path to do that?
Yeah, well, it took a while. So it took a while for me to get the courage, to be honest. I've been a clinical dietitian for about 4 or 5 years, dealing with the frustrations that most clinical dietitians feel: underpaid, undervalued, and overworked. And I did everything that I could to use old, traditional marketing methods to be able to really, truly help more people. And so I started working overtime. I worked a Saturday clinic.
Wow.
Everything I could to be able to make more money and be able to help more people. I just didn't feel like I was fully being, my position at the hospital was truly valued, and it made me feel small inside, and I felt sad. And so what I did is I tried to, build relationships with other dietitians, and I did that slowly on the side, but I felt very alone as a clinician, and especially in an environment where I just didn't feel like what I was doing mattered to the team and to the patients. And so I try to keep a good attitude by looking for opportunities in my hospital and looking at the bright side. And that landed me an opportunity to do some speaking. And the speaking opportunity, I taught a nutrition curriculum to dental residents for 4 years. It was 5 years. And in that time, I got the confidence, and I love being able to help and talk about nutrition to other healthcare providers. And so it made me feel more useful. And I also did get paid for it. And I appreciated that, since my base salary at the hospital didn't have a raise.
Right.
So in the combination of the frustration and not feeling, adequate as a clinician was improved slightly by finding the opportunities as a consultant. And how I segued into what I do now is I was told by a friend, when I mentioned to her what I was doing, she said to me, you don't share anything on social media. Why don't you talk to other dietitians? And I was feeling a little bit, frustrated with the concept of who else is doing things outside the box. So then I went on social media to talk and find other dietitians who were trying to create more impact and income. And I didn't find that big of a community doing it. What I decided to do was find the people, dietitians. I used Instagram. That's my favorite platform. I started building up and empowering other dietitians around the world. And then they, just to find out, what are we doing to create more income and impact? Specifically, it started with just impact, not even money. It was what are you doing on how are you helping patients and clients? And so I remember showcasing other dietitians and creating mini videos with them and just doing everything I could to reach out and find out what dietitians are doing. And that led me to grow my Instagram account and be really focused on helping other dietitians. And then dietitians asked me, how do you use social media? And then dietitians asked me, how do you make money? And that turned into my full-time virtual business just a couple of years later, after posting on Instagram, really just to feel like I had some type of a community to find other dietitians who were out there thinking outside the box beyond that, 9-to-5 clinical that we're all told we have to do.
That's so interesting. So when you use social media originally, it was more to find community?
Yeah, the entire reason I went on social media was because I wanted to find other dietitians like me who wanted to do more than just show up and punch in and out. And I mean, I know it's subjective to say 8 patients a day because I was in clinical. It can vary from 8 to 16, but I did outpatient, and I wanted to find people who wanted to do more than what you're told to do in clinical.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find it in my small community. So I said, I'm going to find them on social media. And I did. I found them.
Yeah, you did. You found this all. I think it's like really, just so you know, inspiring, because like I know that for me, I've been a clinical dietitian now for 4 years. I still work in a nursing home 2 days a week.
Yep.
And when I originally started working, I was also like super frustrated and burnt out. Like I have to work full time in order to make like the same money that like so many people make, like either part-time, or I'm just making like half the salary that someone who went to all the schooling that I went to is making. And it's just crazy. But I totally didn't think to do private practice. Like that wasn't what I was thinking. I only started doing private practice because I learned about intuitive eating and I was so passionate about it. And I was like, wow, like the only way to really do this is in private practice. But when I started to do it, it was so overwhelming. So to find accounts like yours that you're sort of like paving the way, like there is a way to do this, people will pay for, because I hear you say a lot that like we undervalue ourselves. Maybe that's because of the culture that we are underpaid.
Yeah, it's many things. I think that we, as women, we don't negotiate, and dietetics are 95% women, according to CDR statistics in America, and true in other countries from what I've seen. So we're not negotiating. We don't, double down on our worth, and we do have these mindset issues, and we're not conditioned, like you said. You didn't even think to go on private practice. And I was, never told. I talk about this all the time on social. I was never told I would be worthy of anything except for clinical. At best. So growing up in that environment, going to school and being told that, didn't make me feel like I could do anything beyond, what somebody would offer to pay me, which was a very minimal salary. So because we're taught those things, we don't think outside the box. So it takes us to be able to empower and support each other to ask for what we're worth and to strengthen our mindset, and then empower other clinicians as well, both in our niche, right, and in other niches, just so that we can, be role models for them, because future generation doesn't have to grow up the same way we did.
Right. So why do you I went to Queens College. Where do you go?
I went to NYU.
Oh, wow. So why do you think they're not like you say this, and I've even thought about like approaching the schools, like maybe the schools should be having like a business class or like a private practice class.
Yeah. So on my podcast, I actually have an episode, I believe it's on Friday, with a professor from Arizona State University. And we do talk about this. There are schools that are trying to be innovative, both internships and, undergrad and some grad programs that incorporate some aspect of business. I think that it's, there are some changes being made, but they're slow at best. And there are still archaic ways that are being taught to the students. So it's up to us, for when students are looking at role models, to help show the new generation that they don't have to fall into that same, black hole. But I think that the changes in academia are obviously like slow as a snail. So I do think there's movement. I just don't know how standardized it is, and what those conversations are like, and what resources those students have, and how exposed they are to the opportunities. Because the field is growing. According to the Labor Bureau and statistics, nutrition and dietetics is growing by 11%.
Wow.
20, there are a lot of opportunities and need for the field, but we have to make sure that we have those skills to be ready for it, and that nothing happens if we don't believe that it's possible.
Right.
So that's the problem. We fundamentally, especially as women, we don't believe we can do it.
Okay, so how did you go from the mindset of I can only do clinical to I'm going to get community on social to I'm just going to like start teaching everyone what to do? Like, how did you, I'm sure, like you talk about this, how did you like overcome those fears? Like you didn't know that your brand would turn into the brand that it is today.
No idea. Right. So I think it's a matter of truly surrounding yourself by supportive people who inspire you. And so for me, I went on social, and I have had a better experience on Instagram than I could have ever imagined. So going on social and really engaging with other like-minded clinicians has helped empower and support me and truly build community. Like, I'm amazed and blown away by the amount of support from my colleagues that I've met, both, in America and abroad. Just such a wonderful community of people. And so being empowered and supported by them, it creates a, better environment for a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
That you look at, things and concepts and ideas, and instead of seeing something as small and, inadequate, or you're, not prepared to do something, right? Limited thought processes about a concept, you're able to really believe in yourself and overcome any obstacles that come your way. Whether you're, not offered a raise and you have to work through that, or maybe you didn't land a sales call from a prospect who you wanted to work with. When you approach those situations with a growth mindset and you have a positive perspective and take every opportunity as a learning opportunity, and then you're around other people who feel the same way, it helps you grow into a stronger version of yourself, or what I call a dietitian boss, right? So you're going from a dietitian who thinks she has to go in clinical and accept a low salary because that's all she can get, to a dietitian boss where you can make the rules and surround yourself by people you choose to be with. And that helps empower you to make better decisions for yourself, for your family, for your self-worth. And then also, it's really for role modeling in the field so that other people can feel the same way too. And that's the most rewarding for me. It's not just the money I create, but knowing that like young women in the field like can create the business and income and impact that they want without having to waste 5 or 10 years of agony and angst, anxiety, and going to a job that they're not valued or they're treated poorly. Like, you don't have to do that.
Right. Yeah, but I've heard you talking on your podcast before about like how you've always had like sort of like an entrepreneurial spirit. Like you had like your personal training, right?
Yeah. So my background, I was I still am a personal trainer. I don't train no clients, a full-time virtual coach. So I did that when I started that when I was 19. So I had my own business, did that in New York City. So I do have that in me. I definitely look back and I made a lot of mistakes in that business as well, undervalued myself. I was so grateful that anybody would pay me money as a personal trainer. I was independent. I both worked for a gym and I did independent training, meaning I would go pay a gym and I would coach or train people there. And I still had a hard time believing that, people would pay me the rate that I charged. And I know I could have had better policies. I could have charged more. I could have enforced my cancellation policies, right? All the things you deal with in practice, private practice, are very similar to what I dealt with as a personal trainer. And so when I see the parallels, I realize that I didn't value myself, but I also didn't have any female like personal trainers. It's a very small pool of us that I looked up to and that I felt had a decent sense of business. So I made a lot of mistakes. So yes, I have an entrepreneurial background, but I haven't always made the right choices to put me on the right path to really value myself. And I talk about that all the time, like my struggles with valuing myself in my past. And it helps me inspire women now to value themselves when you are able to look at your own behaviors and your past and just be really honest with, the decisions and the processes the decisions you've made, right? You didn't negotiate salary, or you went straight into clinical without thinking that you were worthy of even trying something else, or you accepted a one-off session instead of really focusing on a package or a bundle or something longer term to mutually benefit the business and the client relationship. All those are examples of things that we all commonly do without even thinking twice. And if we rethink that, we can create the business that we want if we just commit to doing it.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like from what you're saying, it was more like a systemic problem, like we all sort of act or agree as a community that like we're not good enough. Therefore, we all like don't challenge like what we're paid or whatever. And you're basically like pushing that envelope.
That's one issue. I think there's a lot of issues, but yes, a systemic problem is definitely true. And I do think that schools could get on it faster. And I think that I just don't know how fast it'll be standardized for academia to teach us, for curriculum to be updated in didactics. I mean, how archaic is the curriculum to require us to know about food service and management, but nobody's required to learn social media, which is how you get cash paying clients.
Right.
So there's an ethics position statement from the Academy of how to use social media, but there's, very few resources.
Yeah, so I have a question about that actually, and it's more like a advice for me, and I guess other people could benefit. So when I started my practice, I started taking insurance.
Yeah.
And there's definitely two schools of thought. Like from the people who I've spoken to, one
Yeah.
school of thought is like you charge your worth and the people who are committed will pay. And then the other school of thought is like you're new, you're starting out, get your feet wet, get whoever you can in the door, either whether it's insurance or self-pay, and then raise your prices. So like I've done both, and
Uh-huh.
I've found that like a lot of my insurance clients are very committed and great to work with, even if they're paying a small copay or nothing at all.
I mean, and that's wonderful that you feel that way. I think it's all about what you want. So the answer to what school of thought I have, I obviously subscribe to the self-pay model because I teach my clients and I adopt the same philosophy of having control. So when I have control and I can create the packages I want with no limitations of how insurance dictates how I want to, reimburse or set up my agenda or schedule, anything like that. Also, when you create a self-pay offer, you get to decide who you work with. And so
Right.
you have control over the not only the price point, the deliverables, everything, where insurance is red tape.
Hmm.
So I'm not a fan of insurance. I know you can take it. A lot of my clients will do a mixed model, or they'll come to me saying, yeah, I'm exhausted because I don't like the clients I work with. Their insurance, I got a quick win, help me grow my virtual practice. And I have many clients who have talked about their stories openly about that, shifting models on my podcast. So I understand that the insurance model can work, but the downfall of it long term, in my opinion, is that I like control over creating. And then the thing is, you create offer that your ideal client wants, but then you have control also of the marketing piece.
Right.
So when you're taking insurance, the marketing piece is very different than when you're doing self-pay. So self-pay marketing, you're appealing to the ideal client, but if you're attracting insurance, the marketing of taking insurance is very different. And so I'm familiar with marketing for self-pay, which means you, the dietitian, has control. If you have the mindset and you're willing to do it, the payoff is tremendous.
There, so that's like really my question. Like, where is your confidence and your mindset? Like, where does that come from? Like, it's so challenging. Like, I don't even really get that you're so confident. I mean, I see that your business is like taking off and you're committed and you're constantly on social media and everything like that. But like, I feel like even just to be an entrepreneur when you're 19, doing your personal training thing, like, where did you get that like
Yeah, so I
confidence
guess
in yourself?
we can go back before 19, but I really truly believe it's like the people I hang around, and like the fact that I invest in myself, I invest in coaching, I always have, and professional development. My husband is supportive of a growth mindset as well, and the people I surround myself with have a growth mindset. So I engage in conversations where people support what I do and how I do it, and I, connect with other strong willed women and other dietitian bosses. And I think that makes a huge difference because I said it on my Instagram, like, don't listen to broke people.
Right.
Like, if you want to make impact and income, like, you better level up who you spend your time with. And
Right.
if you're not sure who that is in real life, then, go listen to people's content that inspire you. If you're struggling with vulnerability, listen to Brene Brown, right? So
Yeah.
whatever aspect you feel you need to fill that gap, spend your time and energy. There's so many leaders like Sheryl Sandberg, right, who
Yeah.
inspires me. I absorb their content, reread their books. So if you don't know people who can strengthen your mindset in real life, or you're not sure, it's questionable. There's so much great content out there, podcasts, books, and resources. And that does help as well. And I do constantly listen to podcasts. I read a book a month, business book, and that does help. It helps, and it's a learned skill. Anybody
Mhm.
can learn how to do it with
Mhm.
time. And what increases my confidence is to see my clients succeed. Like, it's just amazing to see them time after time, be able to reach their dreams and create self-pay packages and sell them and market. Like, that's makes me feel very happy to see that they're doing that for themselves, and then they're spreading that message, showing other dietitians that they can do it too.
Right. And I think that I heard for the first time on your podcast about Jen Sincero, and I read her book, and it was
Yeah,
like
it's
so
great.
it was so good. And I was like, yeah, right. The people who are skeptical of me having my own business aren't making the money that they want to be making.
Yep.
So but it's still hard, like to be like, I feel like the people who, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like for the majority of the world isn't like so much into the growth mindset. So it is
Oh, I
definitely,
think you're right. So I think it's a learned skill. I think that, and I have that in my like free workbook, like, oh, listen, download, and I have like a few books, exactly. Jen Sincero is one of them. So I recommend to, read a book a month or a quarter if you can't do a book a month, but like incorporate some way where you're constantly working on it, whether you're journaling or you're meditating or you're finding some place and space in your life to focus on positive things. Yeah, it's really important. And a really helpful thing is as women, for the women listening, is to surround yourself by other strong women, because that
yeah,
is really, truly helpful to see
yeah,
other women that can do it, because it's harder for women.
yeah.
We bear children and have all these responsibilities. And so to see other women, both moms and non-moms,
Mhm.
doing amazing things is very inspiring.
Yeah. And I just want you to know, like, the way that so I just took Jessica Setnick's eating disorder boot camp class. And she said something like so interesting. She said, like, the way that we behave or the way that we set boundaries with our clients is like a modeling for our clients. So that's really what you're doing. Like, you're modeling for all of us dietitians. Like, you could totally like break down these walls, and you don't have to have these limiting beliefs, and you could just like create the life that you want. Like, if you try hard enough, or if you,
Absolutely. And not even hard enough. It's really just focusing your time and energy. You don't need to throw spaghetti on the wall, so to speak. Like, you just need to focus on aligning who are you talking to, how are you helping them, and what platform do you want to use to send your message.
yeah.
That's really it. If you can figure out those basic things, you have the opportunity to reach your goals, create impact, and really, truly. And I have numerous examples of folks who have done that, dietitians who have done that.
Yeah. So I'm in a mastermind now with two other entrepreneurs, and and then like the head entrepreneur. And it's actually interesting because when I was so nervous to join it, and I definitely have like my own money issues that I know you talk about on the podcast, which is like really interesting to think about, like where they come from. And actually like spoke it over with my therapist, like, what do you think I should do, because I really want to do this mastermind, but like it's not really that expensive, but like it's another thing on top of my
Sure.
marketing team.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And she was like, like for me, like, you feel nurtured by other women entrepreneurs. Like, that's a way to nurture yourself. So it just sounds like, besides for like, hopefully it'll help you make more money, like it will help you feel good. And like, it's so cool that like one of the things that I've started, so like you just said, throwing spaghetti on the wall, like the mastermind head says that also, like, shooting in the dark. And that's kind of how I felt like I'm starting my own business, but I don't even know where to start. Like, there's literally a million things to do. So one of the things that like the mastermind helped me to do is like I really stopped posting on social media unless I was inspired. And I'm only inspired when I'm in like more of like that growth mindset. When I'm in like that limited mindset, like I'm not gonna get clients, no one's gonna like my post, like then like what am I posting?
Yeah. And I think that's a good reflection for you to start getting that self-awareness about yourself. So I think that's great. It's a good example for everybody to think about.
Yeah, so I just want to end really quickly with so the reason why I wanted to interview you is because well, you're really inspiring, but also I really want people to see that like intuitive eating helps you have like more of this like intuitive living lifestyle, and it really opens up your mind. But it sounds like you're doing that with your clients also, like you're helping them grow a business, and that's like a practical thing, but you're also, like you just said, journaling, meditating, reflecting. Like, do you find that there's like a lot of spirituality or like depth in what you're doing with your clients?
Definitely. Yes, absolutely. A lot of soul searching, and everybody has a different way of doing it. So uh, some people will go deeper. For example, exploring your why, your higher
Mm-hmm.
purpose, right? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And so I have dietitians in my group program, explore that exercise with a module that I have, and then share it in the private Facebook group. And in that process of reflecting on your story, your biography, your why, and then connecting that information with who you're marketing to, that process can be really triggering. Multiple clients tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing it and getting really deep with, what inspires you can bring up, you know, really personal traumatic events, and talking about that openly is very hard for a lot of women. So it's that process of being able to talk about that information openly in a small community. Some of us are able to go deeper than others, but it can definitely take a lot of spiritual practice and pacing. Um, yeah.
Was that where did you expect that when you first started that?
No, I don't think, I guess I didn't realize it, but it really does go hand in hand with what I do, because it makes sense that I didn't realize how deep it would be until I progressed, because I didn't get that deep when I first started.
Yeah.
So when I first started, I didn't talk. I mean, an earlier episode, I talk about my money story, but
Mm.
I talk about coming from a single parent home, but I didn't come out with that when I first started, but nobody walked me through exploring my why.
Right.
Nobody told me I needed to do that.
Right.
So I didn't get that deep until much later in the journey, when I found out, like, oh, that would have made sense to talk about or to think about first in this process. So that's why I now, that's a part of my method, is exploring your why. And there's a lot of levels, right? So I think that it has been interesting, but it makes complete sense, because when you are in business and when you're really diving into your business journey, you learn a lot about yourself. And so it's just a part of the process.
Yeah.
The deeper that you go into business, the more you learn about, your ability to set boundaries, enforce boundaries,
Yeah.
create boundaries, deal
Right.
with situations and problems that come up, have that deep level of empathy towards yourself and those who you love and those around you. And so there's a lot of learning experiences, both just in the day to day and then in the exploratory phase, because when you're building your brand and you're really, growing your audience and selling and, attracting people to come to your products and services, and you're getting really deep and vulnerable with your message, that can bring up a lot of feelings.
Yeah. That's definitely like the very similar to like what I do with my clients with intuitive eating, because like of course we're talking about their relationship with food, but that almost always inevitably goes into like their relationship with their parents and how they were, treated with food, or their relationship with money, or their relationship with anything in their life, really.
It goes deep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to bring that up. And I do think that I wouldn't know if I wouldn't say everybody that I've worked with realizes that it goes that deep, including myself.
Mhm.
But I think it's good.
It's really deep work. It's like
It is
really like
work. Yeah,
changes your whole life, your whole perspective.
yeah.
And you
And
learn to give
you can
yourself what
take
you
it,
need.
you can pace it. So if it feels
Yeah.
overwhelming, if you're listening and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I think you can pace it out. So there are levels, or you don't have to, share every aspect if you don't feel like it, and always seek help. Professional help can be a really great resource as well, because I think some people get scared, which is understandable.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a really good point. But it's just like, it's interesting because I'm like kind of rebranding my own business now to make it just so that people understand that like this is really deep work. It's really hard work. And like, I want you to be committed and I want you to be growth oriented, because if you're not, and obviously, like you said, you could pace it could be self-paced, but like it's going to be hard to move forward if you're not ready to move forward.
And then also human beings, like some of us, just take longer to go from acknowledging aspects of our story, whether it includes trauma or not, to the next phase. And that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so thanks so much for like teaching me.
Yeah.
Joining
Thank you
me.
for having me. It was a wonderful conversation, as
Sure.
always.
Sure. Do you want to just say where everyone can find you again?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Libby Rothschild. My podcast is called Dietitian Boss, and my website is libbyrothschild.com. If you want to email me, I'm Libby at Libby Rothschild. And I would love to, communicate with everybody who reaches out.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.